Chapter 4. Is someone secretly in love? Some time later, Mr. and Mrs. Cole, who lived in Highbury, decided to have a dinner party. While they were waiting for all the guests to arrive, Frank Churchill came and sat next to Emma, and they talked. In the middle of their conversation, Emma overheard Mrs. Cole say something very interesting.
Did you know that Jane Fairfax has a piano now? It arrived today, and nobody knows who sent it,
said Mrs. Cole excitedly to her neighbour.
A piano,
thought Emma.
That's a very expensive present. I wonder who sent it.
Frank saw her looking thoughtful.
Maybe Jane Fairfax has an admirer,
he said playfully, and smiled at her.
Don't be silly,
said Emma, laughing.
I believe that Colonel Campbell sent it. He looked after her when she was a child, and is like a father to her. I'm sure that he sent it. I really don't think that Jane has an admirer,
she went on,
or that she is looking for a husband. She is too unfriendly for that.
Yes, I'm sure that you're right,
agreed Frank immediately. Later that evening, Mrs. Weston came and sat next to Emma, and they talked about Jane Fairfax's piano.
You know, I think that Mr. George Knightley sent it,
said Mrs. Weston.
Mr. Knightley?
Said Emma in surprise.
Yes, I think that Mr. Knightley is Jane's secret admirer,
replied Mrs. Weston, talking quietly.
You know that he loves listening to Jane play the piano. He always says that she has the best voice he has ever heard. And this evening, he sent his carriage for her and Miss Bates to travel in.
But that isn't anything unusual,
said Emma.
Mr. Knightley knows that they don't have a carriage, and he is always very kind to Miss Bates.
Well, I think that he sent it because he is secretly in love with Jane,
said Mrs. Weston, smiling in a playful way.
No, Mrs. Weston, I am sure that you are wrong. I know Mr. Knightley better than anyone,
said Emma confidently.
Jane and he are too different. Mr. Knightley is so warm and kind, and Jane Fairfax is so cold. No, it isn't possible. And don't forget, Mrs. Weston,
said Emma,
Mr. Knightley is like me. He doesn't want to marry.
But Emma could not persuade Mrs. Weston to believe her. Just then, everyone decided that it was time for some music. First, Emma played the piano, and she and Frank sang some songs together. Everyone agreed that they were a very handsome couple. After a few songs, Emma went back to her seat, and Jane sat at the piano and played and sang with Frank. She played the piano really beautifully, and she had a better voice than Emma, too. Emma looked at Mr. Knightley, who was watching Jane and smiling. It was clear that he loved listening to her. Everyone wanted Jane to sing song after song, but she was becoming tired. When Frank asked her to sing another song, Mr. Knightley glared at him and whispered to Miss Bates.
Miss Bates, please tell Jane to stop. she is too tired, and if she sings another song, she will be ill.
Emma was surprised.
He is being attentive to Jane. I wonder if Mrs. Weston is right,
she thought to herself. After the music, everyone wanted to dance. Emma loved dancing, and Frank was the first to ask her. As she danced, she looked around to see what Mr. Knightley and Jane were doing. She was happy to see that Jane was already dancing, and that Mr. Knightley was talking to Mrs. Cole. Frank was a fine dancer, and Emma soon forgot about Mr. Knightley possibly being Jane Fairfax's secret admirer. The next morning, Emma thought about the party and smiled. She was a little unhappy that she could not play the piano or sing as well as Jane, but she did not worry too much about it. Emma knew that she really needed to practice more, but she also knew that she was too lazy to do it. The next day, she met Harriet, and they went shopping in Highbury. In town, they saw Mrs. Weston and Frank.
We're going to visit Miss Bates and to listen to Jane playing her new piano. Please say that you will come too,
said Frank, smiling at Emma. Emma didn't really want to listen to Jane playing the piano again, but she decided that she wanted to spend some more time together with Frank. So they all went to Miss Bates's house together. Soon after they arrived, while they were listening to Jane playing, Miss Bates saw Mr. Knightley riding his horse past the house. She got up at once and went to the window.
Mr. Knightley?
She called.
Thank you for sending your carriage for us last night. Miss Woodhouse and Miss Smith are here. We are all listening to Jane playing the piano. Come in and have some tea with us.
Perhaps I will. But how is Jane? Is she well?
Mr. Knightley called back.
I hope that all her singing last night didn't hurt her voice.
No, she is quite well, thank you,
replied Miss Bates.
Will you come in for some tea now, Mr. Knightley? Mrs. Weston and Frank Churchill are here also.
Oh dear, I'm afraid I don't have time today, Miss Bates. But thank you. Perhaps some other time. Goodbye to you,
said Mr. Knightley, and he rode away.